My name is Julie Thomas, and I am the archivist at Sacramento State University in the Department of Special Collections and University Archives. The goal of these tutorials is to introduce you to primary sources and archival material. After viewing these short videos, you'll be able to define a primary source, differentiate between primary and secondary sources, and be knowledgeable with search strategies to locate primary sources. Let's start with the definition of a primary source. It is simply an original record created at the time a historical event occurs, or afterward in the form of a memoir or an oral history. It is the raw stuff of history and has not been filtered through a researcher's interpretation. Before the record, a historical event does not to be famous, such as the Gettysburg Address or the I Have a Dream speech. It is merely something that has happened before this moment. For example, I ate a bowl of Cheerios this morning and recorded it in my food journal. Eating the bowl of Cheerios is the historic event, and my food journal is the primary source. I'm going to give you some examples of how researchers might use my food journal in the creation of a secondary source. One example could be that the National Science Foundation is doing a study on the benefits of eating whole grains first thing in the morning. The NSF could use my food journal to support their research by comparing my health, which is excellent for a woman in her 50s, to younger people with health problems who ate whole grains later in the day or not at all. Another possible example might be that General Mills is starting a new ad campaign with the slogan, "Everyone loves Cheerios." They could use my food journal entries to claim that the Sacramento State Archivist ate a bowl of Cheerios every morning for 45 years. She loved Cheerios and so will you. But you should not consider the theories purported in secondary sources as absolute truth. To be absolute truth. For example, the purpose of my food journal was solely to track my daily food intake. The hypotheses extrapolated from my food journal, that whole grains have more health benefits if eaten in the morning, or that I love Cheerios, may or may not be true. It is the job of a researcher to come up with the hypothesis and use primary sources such as my food journal to support that hypothesis and create a secondary source to put it out there for others to consider. Here are some more examples of primary sources. There's letters and correspondence, diaries and journals, photographs, emails, speeches, scrapbooks, oral histories, which I already mentioned once, newspapers, birth and death certificates, arrest records, clothing, and many, many more. I'm now going to give you an in-depth description of just a couple primary sources. This first example is a manuscript letter that is held in the Sacramento State Archives. It was written by Thomas McGee in 1849 to his aunt in Rushville, Illinois. In this missive, Thomas describes his experiences traveling across the country to the gold mines of California. By definition, a manuscript is a handwritten document. Let's examine the pros and cons of manuscript primary sources. One desirable benefit is that it is a word-for-word accounting of Thomas's experiences. Thus, it does not have any translation or transcription errors. Even one word that is accidentally left out of a transcript can harm the reliability of the primary source. Another advantage is that it contains what is called intrinsic value. That means that the document itself has value over and above its informational content and financial worth. Anyone can come to Sacramento State's archives to physically examine the document up close and experience the wonder of holding an original letter written 165 years ago. However, a manuscript letter can be disadvantageous in that handwriting can be difficult to decipher and can be outright illegible at times. And the meaning of words can change over time. Let's read a couple lines of this letter. Dear Aunt, after a long silence, I attempt to give you a history of my career since leaving you. I landed in safety in Pittsburgh on the Thursday, the 4th of November. I took up lodgings at a hotel near the landing and set out next morning to look for a situation, but a situation was not to be had. As you can see, handwriting has changed quite substantially since this letter was written, and the cursive lettering popular in the mid-19th century can make words such as career and leaving and near difficult to make out. And 165 years ago, situation, as it appears in Thomas's letter, meant a job. Another problem encountered by researchers is that this manuscript exists only at Sacramento State University. Unless we digitize it, a researcher must travel to Sacramento if he or she wants to look at the original. But a primary source needn't only be a handwritten item, it can be printed. A prime example of this is the 8-volume printed set of Lewis and Clark's journals. The volumes are a verbatim transcription of the journals, all misspellings and grammatical errors intact. The appeal of a printed primary source is that researchers are able to easily read the documents without the barriers posed by handwritten manuscripts. Additionally, printed materials are readily available at libraries and special collections that have acquired them. In this instance, researchers do not need to travel to the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia, where the originals are held. Although this set is quite rare, other transcriptions of the journals are available at over 1,000 libraries in the United States. In the next tutorial, I'm going to define and describe an archival collection, provide examples of different types of archival repositories, and look at discovery tools to locate archival material.